For this case study, we're going to go over the Dari motion capture and what you actually see when it comes to that data in relation to biomechanics. So there's a lot of different biomechanical equipment now out there that's available to facilities, practitioners, people, commercial. And they now are all incorporating some type of gamification or some type of way to make things a lot more lively and more fun, right? So in this case, we're gonna go over the Dari. I had the privilege to use the Dari for a long time, on owning the unit. Um, there are other machines out there like Kinotech, KinoSense, Dart Systems, the Mac Daddy of all machines, right? But the main difference between all these guys is that they use IR, um, which looks at the depths and distance of someone. Some of them have good data points that they could use, some don't. So in this case, the Dari, we were able to get 8 different points of angles and not need to put on dots or anything like that, like the video game stuff that you see out there, right? So cool stuff. I had an opportunity to use this for a long time, and this is what it does. It spits out 4 reports. 4 reports. You have this gamification one, which scores people up to 1,000 points, right? 2 things that take up that 1,000 points. One is going to be performance, so agility, power production, speed, rate of absorptions, things like that. And then quality of the movement. So how well does this person move and in control? So this individual scored 415 in total with both numbers. We want to see numbers over 300. That's typically a good number, especially the performance if you're an athlete. But for a normal human being, we want good quality movement because it adheres to your sensory, right? That you know what's going on. Let me adjust real quick, guys. So going into this, you can see it gives us an overview. This is the gamification part. Gives us an overview of everything: squats, lunges, jumps, shoulder and spine regions, upper body region, that's what it means. And then it gives us an idea like where is the main key points of problems. So center of mass. Basically, they have no control of their whole trunk region and their lumbopelvic. That's not good. They have no control. They're not good at it. So if you have no control, you can't really produce power, right? All right, this one is not the test that we're going to look at next, but here is the next sheet that we're going to look at. And this is what I tell people. This is the sheet that I interpret for you. And we keep it very simple. Well, at least we try. All right, so this individual, if you notice, you're going to see a lot of different numbers. It's going to be a lot of crazy movements. Shoulder abduction is just going overhead, bringing both hands together. So in this case, what I usually tell people is there a major difference between the two? Anytime that it's over 10, that's a major problem. 5, okay, but 10, it's a significant change in between. And that's what we see here. We see a bit of a difference between both, delta. So what is going on that's creating that problem? We'll take that movement and we'll try and link it up to another movement and then associate it with this muscle in particular is becoming the problem since it does the same thing over and over again. When it comes to biomechanics, it's not about that one test. It's about, is there a pattern and relations to the other movements that's occurring? That's when you start nitpicking like, hey, this is the main component that needs to be worked on, because I could look at all this and I could give you a million different exercises. The problem is we don't have the time to do a million different exercises. So we need to be very picky and really point down what is the global factor for this person. So this one's going to be a long video, but bear with me. Something's going on the left lat, going overhead. There's some restriction. What we're seeing here is that there is a coronal deviation. What it means is that he's rotating the hand to try and get that range of motion to match the right side. So you ever seen someone like open up? They'll try and turn their hands in to get it. We don't want that. So now moving on, we can see that he bends the elbow a lot in both sides. It's an indication that both lats are tight, but probably the left one is worse. He's not using a lot of the neck. So if this number is over 10, then that means that he's throwing his face forward to get that space. We don't want that. Not when there's no weights or anything going on. So this is okay. This is just a neat little graph that shows you what's happening in both sides. You know how fluid it is. He got stuck on this side. And then how much the arms turn. Like I was saying earlier. So see how this one's massive and then he finally gets up there? Yeah, so that's an indication of a problem. Shoulder abduction, so pretty much doing this. Both sides. No, my apologies. So it's it's actually clapping your hands together and opening up, right? That's on the next one. So big difference again, right between left. So see how the last test I said lats? In this case, he's got a very strong chest, helping him bring that arm all the way in. Sorry, out. So there's something going on. Abduction is away. So something's going on that's not allowing him to open up as much as he can on the right side versus the left. It's not major, but it is in there. It's almost 10 points. Could be right pec tightness. Okay. And we have to relook at that. He opens up more, so he's trying to reach and still opens up the chest to get there. Didn't work. And then he uses his neck a lot just to get there. So again, past 10, that's a problem. Throws his head forward to basically open his arms. Right? So what's going on there? Is the right pec tight or is the left one weak? Again, we need to narrow it down. Internal, external rotation. So the one I messed up earlier. So external, internal, both sides. No major differences when he does external. Some differences between the left and right. Does very well on the left, not very good on the right. So this being tighter and this last one being weaker, we could start extrapolating that the right chest is tighter. It's more dominant. It's a stronger muscle, and he's not getting enough range of motion in that right shoulder. Starting to make sense how we're putting the pieces together. Again, he cheated just to get that range of motion, even though it looks good. He cheated, meaning he was trying to turn the arms, trying to get there. That type of scenario. It looks pretty good from there on. So yeah, his right chest looks like it's tight. Not letting him move. Might be why he was able to use his lats more. Who knows? If you saw the DEXA, he's got a right hip hike. It's usually related with the left side. So anything that happens in the right hip could be related to the left hip. Left shoulder. Since we have the tendency when we're not unbalanced, when we're unbalanced at the hip, right, one side higher, the opposing shoulder is going to try and do the opposite so that you look normal. So this could be the case scenario. Left side is trying to figure out how to get up there to compensate for the right side being offset. It could be. I'm not seeing the guy right in front of me. This is actually pretty good. So extension flexion is just hands go up, hands go back. Right? Both sides. Looks pretty good. Don't see anything crazy. He opens up a little bit. Like he moves the arms out a little bit when he's trying to reach. But nothing out of the ordinary. Pretty good. He uses his neck a lot. So for him to go up, he throws his head forward to go behind him to get that space within the scapula and the neck. Not good if you have neck issues, neck tension. Getting a lot of this involved for movements that you should be able to do this, or even like reach up to the sky, that's an indication that you're trying to compensate, trying to give yourself space. It could give you a lot of neck issues. A lot of neck issues in the back. People could be complaining. It could be from a lot of habits of doing cell phone work or computer work. A lot of different things. Looks pretty good from there. Bending forward. So actually rolling your body down forward. Looks pretty good. So what we want to see is a lot more thoracic mobility versus lumbar mobility. And then we want to see that you're even between left and right, so you're not turning while you're reaching your toes. Pretty good. Bending side to side. Again, we want to see if there is a difference between the two. There's not. It's pretty good. There's no compensations, like he's not flexing forward to one side to reach. Like when he bends one side or the other, he's not doing this. Good. Lunges for rotation. A lot of people can't do this one so well because they just don't rotate often. And it's something that happens with a lot of people, especially people that just work in one plane. So bodybuilders, CrossFitters, they have a tendency to just work in sagittal plane, horizontal plane, but there's no transversal plane. There's no rotations. Or the rotations that you usually see, it's like a Russian twist. Those are not the best for you. But in this case, like, he just can't rotate. He can't rotate. Like, there is no rotation. It's flexion. So for him to actually go this way and the legs go forward, he needs to bend his body forward to get into that position. Not what we want to see. We want to see a straight, neutral rotation of the body going that way. So obliques, QLs, they're not doing a good job. Squats, everybody's favorite. When it comes to depth, we want to see you hit more about 50% of your body in height. He didn't make it. And there's not a lot of trunk flexion, so it's good. He's not like hunching forward to go into a squat. This is a fun one because we get to see all the angles. Like, he's pretty neutral. We want to see this closer to 100, but again, he didn't get down enough. Like, he needs more squats. Everything else looks pretty good. So because he doesn't have much of a squat, we want to see what's the ratio between ankles, knees, and hips. They look pretty good, but he is bearing a lot of weight on his knees. These two should be somewhat evenly distributed, but it's not bad. Here we get to see where he shifts left and right. So in this case, we are seeing that he goes a lot to the left. Yeah, so he's dominating to the left side. It would make sense because he's got a hip hike on the right. So he's going to put a lot more weight when he goes to the left side. Just no. Now, there's times where we have bilateral and unilateral problems. And it has to do with people getting trauma from an injury, or they just get reoccurring injuries and they get problems and they just don't understand why. Sometimes it's mental. Sometimes it's structural. So when we do bilateral and unilateral, we could tell if it is more of a mental game or if it is a structural game. In this case, like, you see how they're pretty even, right? Except this guy. So he has very little control on the left knee versus the right knee. This guy caves in. Same thing, the torque is a little higher on one side. So he's more comfortable on the right side than the left side. Right? So he's still good. He just has more control of the right, being the dominant side, and the one with the hip hike. Which comes down to, like, hey, we need to fix your hip so that this could get evened out and you feel more comfortable putting more weight on that left side and get better ranges of motion. Lunges, going back to this. Stride, we're not worried too much. Stride length, we're not worried about it too much. Again, it just comes down to like balance and how they give themselves balance. So far, pretty good. They're all the same, but you see how he kind of like skewed to the right on the right side. It means that him pushing out from the left is he has no control. Doesn't do a good job. Lateral lunges, again, left and right, pretty good. Hip flexion. So you can get more hip out of this one versus the other side. Why? Longer leg, more comfortable, probably strikes on the floor more often with the left leg. So he's going to be more comfortable getting down. This will change when we go into the jump squats. Step downs, same thing. We get to see the dominance. He feels more comfortable going down the stairs with his right than his left. So he's probably a righty. See how these are much greater in range of motion? Typically means that they have more control. It's not as stiff, more control. Step downs, balance test. Terrible balance. Really bad. So we want to see all these numbers under one. So right away, again, I haven't seen this individual in a long time. Looks like they might have a lot of knee issues, but it's because they have no balance. They don't understand how to use their ankles, their knees, and they don't use their pelvis for balance. So it means that they're very weak. They're very weak. They don't have control. This is usually the cause for a lot of knee discomfort. Knee, ankles, and hips issue. Also rigidity, because if you can't balance, you're going to get rigid to compensate to make you more balanced. It's kind of like, how can I put it? If you see a bamboo tree in the wind, how it bends and goes back up, very strong, it won't break. It'll continuously bend. Versus a concrete wall. Well, if the concrete wall can bend, then the other compensation would be, let's make this super rigid and hard so that you don't have the opportunity to be that malleable. But which one breaks more often? Concrete wall, right? So, interesting enough, that's how our body compensates. It gets very stiff to protect us. Big problem. No balance. This is something that we would want to work on. Build some strength, build some neurofeedback, build some proprioception stuff, build some more motion, like understanding more ability to move, and everything will just change after that. So programming will be extremely catered towards that lower body half because, again, he's a big guy. If you've seen the DEXA test with it, he's a big guy. He needs to lose weight. This is part of that component. So if we focus on the lower extremities, this is going to come along with it and be incorporated with it. So jump. Jump, we want to see again closer to 50. This is about average for someone that doesn't do much. 12 inches off the ground. Force production, this is all estimated based on weight and flight time. So it does a really good job at understanding what this looks like and then how fast he actually gets down from the floor and back down. So the major components we want to look at is how they land and how they push off. In this case, he's pushing a lot from the left side as opposed to the right. Again, could be just because he has a longer left than the right because of that hip hike. Torque, power production, which is interesting. He's actually very balanced in power production. And then absorbing power, potentiation, and everything else. Pretty good, to be honest. Like, he's not, like, I don't see major numbers because it's not major things, but we would want to see improvement in both sides. So this is concentric. This is a hold it at the bottom and then jump up type of thing. No momentum carrying you as opposed to the other one. See how this one has more range of motion again, but he dominates with the right? Doesn't make sense. It means that he's leaning a lot to the left. And again, it could be because it feels like a longer left leg than the right just because of the hip hike. More numbers. Unilateral, again, we want to test unilateral versus bilateral. Pretty good. Um, See what happens here? Again, longer leg, shorter leg. I'm just going to start skimming through it. But lateral bounce, jumping back to back, distance versus speed and power. So, again, longer leg, better depth, which is interesting because he's got no control, right? All these numbers will change when he improves control. Hops, 5 ankle hops, height 6 inches. So with time, we want to see this get better, but there's no like major red flags in any of these numbers. This one, so he's actually taking a lot of load on the knees as to opposed to the ankle, which is okay, but one side is worse than the other, which means that he can't recoil the power well enough. And then you have the drop jump. So this is jumping off a 16-inch box and then jumping back up. Again, left side versus right. Could be because it's a longer leg. Everything else is absorptions, the concentric angles, and peak torque. In the end, this is a normal person who has some tightness in his right chest, some tightness in his left lat, and it could be from the hip hike. And then he is dominating a lot on. He is forcing the left leg to get into deeper ranges of motion because it's a longer leg, technically, from the hip hike that he has. So we would program around all that, and it includes some type of transversal movement, including internal and external rotation of the hip, because that's gonna help you mobilize the lumbopelvic. So we'll incorporate all that together. That's all gonna improve his sensory in the end, balance, control, and everything else that he's doing with better biomechanics, and he'll lose weight doing it because it's easy but a challenging type of routine, especially as you start adding more and more nuances to it. But that's how we would program based off of this for that gentleman.